So I'm so glad to come last. So I have plenty of ideas from the wonderful talks that were given. I must say that when I arrived, I mentioned to Richie, I have no clue what I'm going to say. And plus I had no presentation, and then I did now have two to show. So the first time I was actually exposed to creativity, there was a peace summit in Vancouver with His Holiness the Dalai Lama and 5 women Nobel Prize, and there was Eckhart Tolle and all kinds of great people. And then they said I have to moderate a panel on creativity with His Holiness. And then there was Ken Robinson, who is a wonderful educator, Eckhart Tolle, Murray Gell-Mann, who is found the quarks, it's the Nobel Prize of Physics. And then I realized when trying to prepare something that there was no word for creativity in Tibetan. So I thought, how I'm going to work with that. But it was a fantastic experiment. And there was also, the Blue Man Group. So they were also there. So here's Murray Gell-Mann, here's Ken Robinson, Eckhart Tolle, and here are the Blue Mans. So it was backstage, and when the Dalai Lama came, he says, "Blue, why blue?" But they don't speak, so they went like this. So, in Tibetan iconography, the primordial Buddha is sort of a naked blue Buddha, Samantabhadra. So he says, primordial Buddha, so they went like this. And then Murray Gell-Mann also kept the nose on stage. But, it went extremely well. This is Eckhart Tolle. And so Murray Gell-Mann started by saying, he spoke about how incredible insights comes to people after, of course, they have been ruminating the question for a long time, and then they give it up. There was a famous example with the French mathematician Henri Poincaré. He was looking for a solution of a mathematical problem for months. And then he gave up. And then one day, just at stepping out of a bus on the steps, he just flashed out. So then Murray Gell-Mann said, it's not about solving problems. It's very easy when you have a question and you have to solve a problem. It's about asking the right questions. As Einstein said, you cannot solve questions with the same mind that created the problems. And then he explained us, a Nobel Prize of Physics, he explained us how rugby came about. And he said there were people playing soccer, and one day one guy just picked up the ball and ran. So he said by breaking the rules, he created rugby. And then he turned to Eckhart Tolle, who he tried to have a scientific study to show to people. So he said he had found a study that when people are on the penalty kick for soccer, they found that those who close their eyes and meditate, go deep within for a few seconds, they score better. But then, of course, he said, that means also that they have practiced for 20 years, but they still need to collect within. He said, if I would do it. And then Ken Robinson said he could not help but thinking Eckhart Tolle meditating for 15 years and shooting and missing the penalty kick. But Ken Robinson, who is a wonderful educator, is somewhere here, told us a wonderful story that maps very much with what was said yesterday. He told of a story of a mother who brought a girl to he's an educator and teacher, to see him in his practice. And he said, my daughter, she has, attention deficit disorder. She can't still quiet in the class. She gets up and do all kinds of things. It's impossible. So then he asked a few questions, and after a few minutes he said, the mother, could you please wait outside for a few minutes? So the mother went, and then he put one kind of music, and the girls got up immediately and started dancing. Then he put another kind of music, and then she danced beautifully, very differently, and a third one. So he called the mother, and he said, well, there's no problem with your daughter. She's a dancer. And she became actually a star dancer. So that shows exactly what Scott was saying, is that we need to make sure that every single young person has, he has the potential for so many things, not something, but so many things. It just needs to be tapped. And if it's not for mathematics, if it's not for anything, at least there's a potential for becoming a good, compassionate human being. So that's more than we can ask in life, isn't it? So that's one thing. And then, there's this creativity. India is especially good for creativity, really good. And look at this guy. That's ultimate recycling. Be creative, doctor. You could introduce that in medicine, And look at the creativity of this person. Everyone is waiting to get a train ticket. There's a big line. But she found out how to deal with stress. So someone wrote on the counter, "She's not slow, you are impatient." And here's the ultimate creativity of how not to use your shoes. You can steal the bicycle, but you can't steal the shoes separately. And that's the ultimate creativity, how to transport flour, easily. So then, since Linda showed her picture as a baby, I don't have a picture of myself as a baby, although my mother has a lot. But I managed yesterday to ask a friend of mine to send me a picture when I was at Pasteur Institute, which I'll give you the premiere of that. So since I have to say something personal, so I started as a scientist with François Jacob, who just passed away a few days ago at age 92. And he got the Nobel Prize with Jacques Monod and André Lvov for finding, how after they found the DNA structure, he found how the RNA messengers does the job of going from DNA to making proteins. So it was a very groundbreaking. But what was, and I got so lucky to get taken in his lab just by pure chance, because what happens is, he had only one PhD student. It was very small. You see, that was his lab, but there was only 4 rooms like that for 3 Nobel Prizes. It was quite something, not like now, So he had one PhD student, and he was possibly taking a second one, and someone had told him, I was about to buy a harpsichord, which I would put all my savings, and that would have been really silly, because then when I left for India, I would have no money. I didn't know that yet, but... So he heard by someone that I was manufacturing myself a harpsichord. So he thought, well, if this guy can manufacture a harpsichord, he could be a good student. So I got there just by sheer luck. So within 5 years, I studied a little bit, the cell division in bacteria, which is a fascinating subject. But then, in the meantime, when I was 20, just before getting in Pasteur Institute, I saw some documentaries about great spiritual masters from Tibet who had fled the Chinese invasion and sought refuge all across the Himalayas. And when I saw that, I had a 6-month sort of break between finishing the university, getting in Pasteur Institute. So I didn't know what to do. I think to go to China. I didn't know it was the height of the Cultural Revolution. There was no way I could get in. I was thinking to do to Japan, to do martial art. Anyway, when I saw that, and all those faces, one after the other, I thought, wow, here's 20 Socrates, 20 St. Francis of Assisi, alive right now. I'm going there. So I didn't speak much English. Actually, after I got sick there a little bit of typhoid, I went to hospital, and I had a bird at that time, as you can testify here. This is me. So that is my earliest I could get. I got last night from the internet to a friend of mine, so that's my baby photo, a little bit grown-up baby. But so then I decided to, this is my way of finding a good solution to a difficult problem. And I thought, well, if there is a will, there is a way. So then that's where and if there's obstacles, we'll find ways to overcome them. So that's where I end up. So retrospectively, I'm asking myself, what was missing? And a good friend of ours, who was a pastor with me and now is part of the Mind and Life, Ben Shapiro, he was there also, and he said, at those days, I knew what I didn't want to do in my life, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. So that was a bit the case. So when I met those great teachers, if I think back now, I'd met wonderful people. My father was a philosopher, so a lot of intellectuals. My mother is a painter. She's alive now. And I was playing music, so I'm not trying to show off, but when I was 16, I had lunch with Stravinsky just by pure luck. So, as a young musician, what else would you want? And, I have an uncle who was an explorer, went around the world on a sailboat without engine for 3 years. So there was all these weird people coming to his place. So I could see a lot of very fascinating people. But it was a bit unsettling that you would find the same spectrum of wonderfully warm-hearted people and very difficult cases. And there was you could not see why the correlation, take 100 philosophers, 100 gardeners, 100 sailors, 100 scientists. There was the same spectrum of wonderful people and not so easy people. So I thought, this is strange. So I want to play the chess like Bobby Fischer, but maybe not be Bobby Fischer. So what's going on there? So when I met, this is also where I ended in the end. And that's my Marlborough country photo. So obviously different places and Pasteur Institute. And then I met my first teacher, Kanju Rinpoche. He spent many, many years, 20, 30 years in solitary retreat. He was not a monk, he had a family. And then when I sat in front of him, I didn't know what to do. I just sat there for 3 weeks. And the only thing I could think is, could I blend my limited little mind with this vast sort of wisdom, kind mind? And this idea of blending, we call Guru Yoga, but it really means uniting with the teacher's mind. And I felt, I don't know anything what he knows. He was also a great scholar, but I have no clue. I didn't know about Buddhism, I didn't know about Tibetan history, I didn't know any Tibetan language. So I didn't bother really. It could have been anything. But what he was, I thought, wow, this person, I don't know about his skills, but I want to become little bit. At least I have a sense of direction to become like someone like that, or at least to go in that direction. That really makes sense now. So I went back after 3 months. And then when I was back in Pasteur Institute, I realized how strong impact it has done on my mind. And that's maybe what we could call creativity in a sense. So I think when we did that panel on creativity, what Eckhart Tolle said, creativity is not just to come out with buckets of different color paints and splash the wall. No, that's just basically exploring the dark, whatever leftover of your imagination to splash paints on the wall. That's not very creative, basically. But if you go from state of strong grasping to ego, to freedom from this exacerbated self-importance, that's really creative, because it's a completely new way to see the world. So in a way, to learn more about the mechanism of happiness and suffering, to find out what's really, every step in life is like a bird flying in the right direction, this feeling of joy in the form of effort when you go in the mountains and reach somewhere. Every step, even sometimes it's raining, sometimes you have to go up and down, but every step is imbued with that enthusiasm that emerges from the sense of direction. And if you lose your way, you sit there, exhaustion sets in, why should I move? Because I don't know if I'm going further or away or closer to my goal, I'm lost. So then the fatigue, exhaustion sets in, and despair. So to meet those great teachers, suddenly it makes sense of what you could become. So a teacher, a real teacher, of course, then it cannot have that spectrum. You cannot say he's a great spiritual teacher, but what a pity, he's angry all the time. That doesn't work. So the messenger has to be the message. He's constantly, every day, every moment, when he teaches or when he just eats or when he goes to the bathroom, he's all the time the living example of what he teaches. There's no flaws, there's no discontinuity, there's no discrepancy, there's no gap. So that's what is eminently inspiring, and the more you stay and live in their presence, the more that gets confirmed, instead of, after 10 years you find, it wasn't as beautiful, it's just a facade. With His Holiness the Dalai Lama, you can see it's the same with the president and with the lady who works at the hotel. It's no difference for him, and he shows that in every aspect of his activity. So that's very inspiring. So I spent 7 years. So I went back and forth every summer. And then when I finally did my PhD, François Jacob wanted to send me somewhere. I forgot, unfortunately, somewhere in the States. It would be nice for the little story to remember, but I forgot. And I say, well, my PhD, I think I'm going a little bit to the east. And I say, I'm sorry, but, I think I finished my work. I'm sort of doing my postdoc in the Himalayas, which I did for 45 years. So he was, he took it quite well. My father, not so much. He was, thought the investment was not really, the return was not so good on his investment. As he said, every philosopher dreams to have a son who becomes a scientist, or to become a kind of weird hippie who doesn't even drink wine or smoke anything, not even atypical one. So as you can see, just those faces are already eminently inspiring. You could feel that you want to sit for a whole day in front of someone. And then after a while, of course, he started giving actual teachings, how to deal with the mind, how to deal with emotions, how to practice. So that's a whole life. But there's something there that is hard to describe. It's very hard to put it in words. There's a mixture of, like a mountain. At the same time, it's not a towering figure that, puts you down. That actually brings you to what he is, rather than looking at you down. So that was extraordinary times. I had a small hermitage with no water, running water, no electricity. But it was, if I look back, it was the happiest time of my life, without contest. And this is his wife, because he was not a monk, but she was also an extraordinary meditator. And so by far, they are maybe less known in the West, but they are wonderful women teachers and meditators. Dunjom Rinpoche was another great Tibetan master who was living also not far, which I used to go to see him quite often. And again, when you were in front of him, it seems like pure awareness was sort of exuding from what he was. Pao Rinpoche, another great master who was there. And when you see two masters, he often come to see my teacher. It's like two suns shining at the same time. You don't know where to look. So this is the monastery that was built, and my small hermitage was somewhere in the woods there. It was made of simple wood. It was maybe 3 meters by 3, and with a small balcony where I keep a bucket of water. It was such a wonderful time. In winter, there was a little snow, and this is when I shaved my beard finally, living in Darjeeling, before I became a monk with Nyushi Khenpo, who is a great Dzogchen master. This is my mother, when she joined me after a few months, and spent there also a lot of time. She is a painter, and now here is she now at 90 years old. And she's a wonderful person. As she gets older and her body sort of starts collapsing, her sort of inner mind shines more and more. So then, when Kangyur Rinpoche passed away in 1975, I became close to Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, who was a luminary among Tibetan masters. He was a teacher to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and he spent 30 years in meditation, in retreat in Tibet. And he was really someone, he was 2 meters high. By all criteria, he was someone out of caliber. And so I was fortunate to spend 13 years, day and night. I was sleeping in his room and attending to him, receiving all the teachings. And he was, again, this mixture of incredible presence, but also incredible kindness, and also merciless for the ego. Why should he have any kind of mercy for the ego? So anybody would mess up with being sloppy, he would mercilessly cut through that. So sometimes it could be very strict and severe, but it was with such kindness. And it was not because he was bad-tempered or fed up with all these bad disciples. It was just for their benefit. So, he could be playful with the photographer. And then, for instance, then you find a good place to meditate. There's nothing else to do anyway, so... So I went 20 times up there. I went also with Luigi. We had a great time. And so that's a very cute hermitage. You have to get there. You have to go on a trunk with steps cut in the wood. So you better not go there when it's raining. So Khyentse Rinpoche went there. We spent 20 days once there. And here I was with him. So that was the beautiful sort of relationship of a teacher and student. And that's just to show off, pretending I'm meditating in high mountains. This is a cave in Tibet. A cute place. So that's what I see from my hermitage now. Oh, so, what can you hope better? And this is the monastery where we stay. We have 500 monks. And when we went back to Tibet in 1985 with Kensei Rinpoche, he had not been for 30 years. And then there was this extraordinary thing, all the people coming from everywhere and getting his blessing. Here is 15,000 feet. And he was, as you see, he only has a cape, but his bare chest. So all kinds of means of transportation. And, there's all these nice horsemen with lampshades on their head waiting for us. And at one point, we came over a mountain pass, and there was 1,000 horsemen waiting for us. So I thought, well, if we have to do a movie and get all those people there, it will be quite difficult. But they were just there waiting for us. So this is the horsemen and reaching to a monastery, and the people are very happy. And so now, also the destruction, of course, of the monasteries. And also, this is how I came close to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, because Kensei Rinpoche will go every year to offer him teaching for 1 or 2 weeks for many years. So, and then His Holiness was very kind, and I became his French interpreter, because somehow, after a long time, I managed to pick up a little bit of Tibetan. And now, because I came back to the West, I also came back a little bit to science, totally unexpected. I would never dream that I would go again to a lab. But thanks to Francisco Varela, because after I did a book with my father, The Monk and the Philosopher, a friend of mine who is a cosmologist or an astrophysician said, let's do a dialogue together. So we did one. And then Francisco said, you're totally wasting your time with physics. You'll never go to the CERN and suggest for an experiment. There's something to do in neuroscience. There we can make a difference. So then I end up with Richie's hands, not far from here. And here's, we can't go 3 in one MRI machine, but that's after coming out. So that with Antoine, I think he looks just like me when I was Pasteur Institute. So maybe in another few years he will change clothes also. So now I'm switching presentations. Yes, where is it? Here. So, yes, I want to say a little bit about creativity and altruism. That's kind of that shows this kind of subject. So again, I mentioned a little bit about how creativity is to go from a state of strong grasping to the self, a very self-centered attitude, to a place where we realize that the self, or whatever sort of so-called identity or person, is more like a dynamic flow of experience, like a river that's all the time changing. And it's okay conventionally to say there is a self, to give it a name, like you give a name to the Mississippi River, but there is no Mississippi River entity, like the small head that pops up and says, don't forget, I am the Mississippi, I'm the real one. And everything else is just like... So the idea that there is a separate, unitary, autonomous entity flowing around that stream, and which you could cling to, which you need to protect, that kind of ego entity. Well, in Buddhism, if you look, the idea, if you look very carefully, the more you look for it, the less you find it. It's not outside, it's not in the body, either in a particular location, it's not diluted throughout the body. If you think it's in the consciousness, well, if it's something that is autonomous, that you feel is constant, I feel I was the same as Pasteur Institute and now, the same person, but in fact it's just a stream of transformation. But if I feel I'm the same, then maybe it's in the consciousness. So where could that constant entity be? The past thought is gone, the future thought is not born, the present is ungraspable. Where do that can hang out? That thing that will be suspended in something between something that doesn't exist anymore or something that doesn't exist yet. So it doesn't make any sense. So it does exist on the conventional level. It's easy and simpler to say, give a name to things and feel there's a continuity and appreciate that continuum, but there is no discrete separate entity. And that saves you from having to protect that at all costs, because the me is so important. If you have a nice nap on a Sunday afternoon in the lake, on a boat, and someone rams in your boat, and you say, why did that to me? And then you wake up and there's no one, it's just another boat drifting, and you laugh. Why? Same thing, you all woke up anyway, But there was no someone who was after you. So the me made the difference. Not because just simply you woke up. So that's the main obstacle to also really flourishing in life. So I mean, really being good with yourself. So really self-compassion is about what is the best for me to flourish in life. It's not just getting more narcissistic. So if you find that, yes, when I wake up in the morning, I don't want to suffer the whole day and certainly not my whole life. So there's this deep aspiration. Even you have been denied happiness for a long time, still deep within, you will rather flourish than suffer. So now if you see that there's everything is so interdependent, and then they're just thinking me all day long, is quite a miserable state of mind, and you make others miserable by your behavior that comes out of that, the way you speak, the way you say, the way you are. So then if you realize that, and you realize the interconnectedness, then you cannot but transport your mind in someone else's mind and say, well, even they are very unskillful. Even they do everything to, make themselves unhappy and make others unhappy. Still deal within. They don't want to suffer. And even you see a dictator who harms others. The point is not just that to have hate for, but to see with the same eye that a doctor would see, a physician would see a very mad person. If a physician, a very mad patient comes, he's not going to beat down the patient the moment he does something strange. He's going to try to help, try to cure. The more the sickness is serious, the more he will try to cure. Or like a mother, I was talking at lunch with someone, a mother who has a mischievous child, she still loves it more and she just wants the child to change. So you can wish that the dictator's hatred, cruelty, psychopath tendency, that all may be removed from that dictator's mind stream. That's a wish that is attuned to compassion. So compassion is not a moral judgment, it's something else. Moral judgment, of course, you can do, but compassion goes at the root of suffering, whatever it is, whatever is the way it manifests. So to extend that, and why there is this mother with the child? Because basically we got that biologically, naturally, as the parental care. And the dilemma often says we are wired biologically for this. As soon as we are social animals, we take care of the children, or whether it's the mother like this, or even the father. There is something there that is so natural that the mother be so concerned, but that was given to us by evolution. But then to extend that, that's where it's so creative, because it requires a lot of cognitive work and it requires training. It's not natural to extend that to those who are outside our group, to strangers, and even less to people who are doing things which are not desirable, or who harm others, or who harm us, or our family, or our belongings, or our group, or our nation. So it's more difficult. So to see them with the eye of the physician or with the eye of a mother to a mischievous child, that takes a whole lot of creative thinking, of seeing, yes, even they are deluded, nobody wants to really suffer, and they have the same sort of right that I have. So as much as I'm concerned with getting rid of suffering, I should be concerned with them. I should value them the same way that I value my own happiness. So valuing others is the root of that motivation of altruism. And I think, like psychologist Daniel Batson agrees, not just as looking at the behavior, you have to look at the motivation. So empathic concern is that you are concerned by the situation of others. If that person suffers, you'll do what you can. If that person has a strong aspiration to fulfill something, you will try to make it happen. So it is about the altruism, motivation to do something for the benefit of others, whether it's removing suffering or bringing along happiness. So to extend that requires a kind of training, because it's not as spontaneous as the mother to take care of the child. And that's where, again, it is creative, because it wasn't your initial. Some people have it more than others as a temperament, but it's not always obvious for anyone. So this extended altruism is something rather unique. And it comes through training. But also, it's not just, with humans. I mean, we have a lot of, without training, this maternal love and parental care as there's many stories or such. In images I found only a few. I was in Calcutta Zoo, and she lost her little tiger, so they put, they dressed them up a little bit. So, and there's plenty of stories. The story of this mother elephant. She saw a small rhino in the mud and tried to get it out with a tusk. And then the mother rhino, she's not that smart, so she started charging the mother elephant, who just went away. And as soon as the mother rhino came back, she came back 3 times. And mother rhino keep on charging. So finally in the morning, the little rhino got up. But imagine that despite being charged by the rhino mothers, 3 times the elephant came back, tried to get the little rhino out. Those things are quite... So if rhino and chimps can have it, why not humans, isn't it? So look at this. It's just licking it. If you see the movie, it's amazing. And he's actually trying to eat the leopard's meat. So there's a direct competition there. So, in short, there's so many reasons, and science also abounds in that this kind of fraternity, brotherhood, sisterhood, coming together, sharing, friendship is so crucial. And it's, there's an island in North Japan where there's the highest number of centenaries in the world. And there's a study that when you ask them, the only thing that is different is that from birth to being 100 years old, you're always together. Those ladies there, I saw a movie, there's 20 of them together. They dance, they sing, they have such a wild time. At the end of the schools, even they don't have grandchildren there, but they all go when the kids come out, and they sit 100 meters away and with sweets, and the kids run to them and run in their arms. They do it every day, twice a day, all their life. So they're never alone. They're never disconnected. And that's seems to be the reason why they all get 100 years old. So social support in terms of not just welfare, but of, have a real human, warm-hearted social support. There's all these benefits have been studied and quite extensively. So, again, I love those ones because, there's so many good to learn. So now Richie should come on my space, but so can we train that? So first of all, before training, I must dispel a misconception. There are plenty of people who will tell you, you pretend you act altruistically, but there is a selfish motive behind. We know that. So, of course, some cases it's quite true. You do something for others, ideally that you will get something more in return, or because you don't want to lose face, or because you feel embarrassed, and you prefer not to feel embarrassed, or because you have empathic distress, because you see someone suffering, and it's the only way to relieve yourself from that distress is to help, then you will help, but otherwise you will run away and look somewhere else. But if you can't, then you feel better help than just feeling bad. So there's all these things are not altruistic motivation. But some people went to the extent to speak about universal selfishness, that there is nothing but that. You'll always find something. And they say, the famous words, scratch an altruist, and then the selfish will bleed. This evolutionist called Michael Giselin who said that. So there's many of those, especially among economists and psychologists, so philosophers like, Hobbes and others. It's just but selfishness. So, and then also, if you do something completely out of generosity, without self-interest, anonymously, and then you feel great joy of having helped a kid to go to school or someone who is sick to get treatment, and they say, I feel so nice, I feel so good I've done that. I say, warm glow, you just do that because you feel good. That doesn't make sense, These examples of someone who jumps in New York, someone fell because he had an epileptic fit on the way, and the train was coming, and the guy sort of figured out there was just space to be below that if he could lie down. So he jumped and left his 2 daughters on the platform and jumped and lied down with the guy, and it just went through. So he didn't think, when it's finished, I'll feel so good when this is over. So then you interview him and he says, I had no choice. And then they say, he had no choice. He worked like an automatic behavior. It's not altruistic. So what does that mean, having no choice? It means the choice was so obvious for that person, that was so much in him that it was like a split second, but he had a choice. Simply it was the expression of what he was. So someone said, Charles Taylor said, ethics is not just what is good to do, but what is good to be. And because if you are, of that kind, then you will jump when times come, and you don't have to think, for half an hour, should I jump or not. So that doesn't mean you don't have choice, that the choice is obvious. But still, we needed to, for a Buddhist practitioner, and I will live with those great teachers, if you say, we have to still prove altruism, it seems like so silly. But, since people still doubt it, so psychologist like Daniel Batson spent 30 years inventing all kinds of very creative ways of testing that, putting people in situations, and so to tease out, for instance, is it to relieve your empathic distress? So he did something like, you could take the place of someone receiving electric shock, but you could also stop looking at that. And then, or you had to look by all means, and then he found that if you could split out, the people who have low empathy would just go. But if you had to look at it, everyone will help. But if you could split out, only the real altruistic people will stay and exchange place. So he did a lot of things like that. So it seems that altruistic exists, which we are very happy. But then the next question is, say altruism exists, but so the world is still what it is. So unless we enhance it, it may be difficult. So there's two ways of enhancing, at the individual level and at the level of culture, the evolution of culture, of society. And then we have to find the articulation point so that those two can connect, so there's a critical mass of altruistic people so that the culture can change. So that's where individual training comes in. So, of course, contemplative science, let's say like Buddhism and others, of course, have done that for 2,500 years. And in their own experience, they do feel the difference. Now, nowadays, of course, if we want to validate that so that in a secular way it can be taught in schools, in society, in jails, anywhere you can think of, it has to be secular. That's the only way. If it's too much with the label of being Christian or Buddhist, it will automatically be rejected. You could not go to, Saudi Arabia and teach Buddhist methods in schools. Well, same probably many other places in the world, and vice versa. So you need something that is so universal, so basic, so below the level of religion that is actually the foundation. As Dalai Lama just said recently in Switzerland, this universal ethics is actually the foundation from which religion then you enhance that through different means. But the fact of compassion, of altruism, of honesty, of tolerance, of discipline, of openness and all that, this is much more basic. It came to evolution. We can enhance it in our own way, and religion can give you techniques, but by no means are they compulsory. So that's why he is in favor of emphasizing the human values in a secular way. So Richie in his lab did this experiment about training people for 2 weeks on a kind of loving kindness meditation, and comparing with a very good psychological intervention called reappraisal, where you see things in different ways, and seeing how much prosocial behavior you get after 2 weeks. And there was this significant difference, and also I think you could see in the brain already after 2 weeks some already beginning of a functional difference. And then, Richie, sorry to take your place, but maybe you should come here. There was something that as whenever I speak of that, other countries, they are really encouraged by that. You could start with preschoolers. We know that cooperative learning should start as early as possible. The jigsaw schools and cooperative learning and all this, the earliest the better. So Richie and his team, they started an intervention with preschoolers, 4 or 5 years old here in Madison, at 8 or 10 weeks training, first 5 weeks on mindfulness, then 5 weeks on gratitude, loving kindness, care, sharing emotions, feeling other emotions, a lot of wonderful things which Richie should explain. And then after that, the teachers evaluate the prosocial behavior of the children, how they relate to each other, how much conflict and so forth. The parents do the same, and there is this difference. But then comes the ultimate test, which is the stickers test. And for that, they have determined who is their best friend in the class, their less favorite child, an unknown child, and a sick child. And then stickers, that's the big deal. So you give them envelopes, and they can give stickers to whoever they like. So before the intervention, they give almost all to their best friend. And I guess the scientists would have expected some difference after 8 weeks, but I think probably they were surprised to see that there was absolutely no significant difference. And what's amazing is same number to the best friend and the less favorite child. So that means completely breaking the in-group, out-group. So that's huge. So it's almost criminal not to do that throughout the world. So when His Holiness was presented that, he says, first 10 schools, 100 schools, 1,000 schools, the UN, the whole world. So that's our goal. So then also, Aristotle said virtue is not just something you learn by hearing, you learn by practicing. Even you are not virtuous from the start, you become. So there was a neat experiment that you ask someone to do 5 acts of kindness in a week. So they have a choice to do it once a day for 5 days of your choice, or to choose one day and you do 5 acts of kindness. So then if you look after a number of weeks to their level of well-being, subject, how they feel, how they engage with others, the positive emotions, those who did in different days, no big difference. Those who did one day, 5 acts, big difference. So what does that show? That day, they got so engaged by having to do 5 acts of kindness that it really changed their way of being and their vision. And even if it was just one day, that just makes you somehow different. It opens your eyes, opens your heart. So you do see also what it is to experience kindness 5 times in a day. So it gives you an insight. It gives you a kind of, one other thing you were speaking this morning, by taking those nice things from the glass. But here you do it from the heart. And then you are different after experiencing that. So I think that's why also practicing loving kindness, taking children or people to, like some of the projects we do in Nepal or anywhere, place where we help the elderly, where we help the orphans, just doing it suddenly breaks that sort of distance and that, you don't know how to deal with that, it's not easy, you feel this bit of empathic distress, but then love takes over and then it becomes so different. So this is also a study of loving kindness that Barbara Fredrickson did, and she showed big changes in people just doing 8 weeks of loving kindness meditation, the vagal tone, which is something that, there's the fight or flight response when you have something, but also the calming effect that has to do with the vagal tone. This was very much changed in 8 weeks, and lots of other things. So, and huge difference of positive effect. So now, can you get that, not from warm heart, but from material possession? So there's the famous study, there's replicated all over the world. Of course, if you are below the line of poverty, the more you get, the better you are. But after a certain amount, the more your income gets, your level of happiness doesn't change. But the good news, happiness, money doesn't buy happiness, but unless given to others. So there was this study showing that people who give a little bit or a lot regularly, and you check every other variable, they are same sample, the only difference is whether they give or not, and then those people are significantly happier. So it could be the warm glow, but as we saw with old Daniel Batson, it's not just that. And possibly, it's a wrong argument to say it feels good to be altruistic, that's why you do it. I think it's completely wrong. First of all, it's possibly that you cannot distinguish, you cannot set them apart. It's too much asking to say, I should be very wonderfully generous and altruistic and feel bad. That's stupid, It's like asking for a fire to burn but not to be hot. And it's just a secondary effect. Of course, if you come and say, I feel terrible, I'm going to give something to someone, I'll feel good. If you do it with this motivation to benefit yourself, it's not going to work. You will not have the warm glow. I will say, I wasted $5 on this guy and I don't feel the warm glow. What's wrong with me? Well, because of course you didn't do out of your heart. You just thought, I will feel good and damn with this fellow, So now, if you just look at material, extrinsic value, the image, all these things, and there's a guy, Tim Kasser, for 20 years, he studied 10,000 people, with questionnaires on how much they have a consumerism mind and materialistic mind. And if you take the 25%, the highest on consumers sort of minded, and the 25% lowest, and you make a difference, it's a huge difference. Those people are less happy, they look for hedonic pleasures, and they don't find happiness. They are in less good health, they have less friends, they are more maybe professional relations, but not real friends. They are not concerned with global questions like the environment. They are more obsessed with debt. They dream of debt more often. There's plenty of things. So then, Tim Castle said, I'm not a moralist, but if you want to be happy, to have friends, to be in good health, please find your priority in the right place. So then to come back to, can we train at the individual level? So then we started, going to the lab. And so not those great teachers like Kensei Moshe, neither this nice Tibetan hermit who comes out of 6 hours retreat, so he seems very, very happy. I don't know because he came out of retreat or because he did 6 years of retreat. And His Holiness during the meetings of Mind and Life, but that inspired the research of great long-term meditators coming here to Madison and other labs, and then submitting themselves to investigation of what does mind training, how much it makes a difference. So the idea was to start with long-term meditators, because if you don't find anything in those, maybe you will not need to look for those who did for 2 weeks. But if you find significant difference in long-term meditators, then you can see how do they come to that, and how long it takes to have at least some difference. So you can start with a lot of. So that's the real way to benefit society, will be to start with people who never did. So there was I think more than 20 of those meditators who came. And so Mingyur Rinpoche, who is a wonderful teacher of ours, so he described being an MRI machine as 4 characteristics. It is dark, it is narrow, it is cold, and it is noisy. So it's not the best way to meditate, but however, still it seems those meditators managed to meditate. That's the first time I went in the machine with Richie. After 2 hours, Richie is very relieved that I'm still alive. So I'm going not to describe all the detail, but just to show you very briefly, this is an EEG measure of a control group. That means people who got instruction for a week, and then here they are in a resting state, nothing happened. Here's the meditation state, nothing happened either. Well, what to do? They didn't train. And then the meditators are at rest, of course nothing happened, but when they engage in compassion meditation, there's this huge increase in the gamma frequency. So that's consistent across many, many experienced meditators, and you don't find it in novice meditators. So if you do mental imagery, that's images that Antoine and Richie gave me, at rest meditators, in meditation there are several areas connected with empathy, positive affect that are engaged, and as you can see, the control group, not much happened. So there's clearly a difference in long-term meditators. And then not only that, but we did this with Tanya Singer with the real-time fMRI, and then she asked, can you modulate your compassion? 30%, 60%, 90%. What does that mean? 30% of compassion, what does that mean? This guy, I don't like him too much. I'm only giving 30% of my compassion. And Linda, I gave her 100%. No, she's a real great lady. So it's not that. When you have a kind of mental state, first it's just born in your mind. So it's kind of weak, but it's there. And then, of course, it can grow in clarity, in stability, in intensity, in quality, and you can grow further to the best you can that day. So you can yourself sort of, but the trick is to go from 60% to 0 to 90 to 30. So we did that, I don't know, a number of 10 hours or so over 2 days. And it seems when you measure the activity in the brain, that is pretty, 30, 60%. So the subjective experience shows us. And then also here, I think Antoine did similar things with electroencephalogram. So for any of those, when you want to train, you need attention, because if you meditate on compassion and your mind is all over the place, you will not get anything. So this continuous performance task is measuring. You have a task that is pretty silly. Each time you see a very tiny number on the screen, when there's 0, you have to push a button. So if you do that, it's 3 numbers per second, so it's very fast. After a certain time, you lose you get distracted, you get tired. But with meditators, this flat. And we had actually 3 meditators, on 45 minutes, 1,000 times, 3 got 0, 100% accuracy. And it's very fast response. And one of them, which is here, At the end, he did this very revealing remark. He said, "What's the problem? Do you want me to continue?" He was there forever, you know. So that's a skill. You do something well with ease. If you start running a bicycle, you do not do it well, you are tense and you're ready to fall down, you're nervous and you don't do it well. If you know how to ski very well or ride very well, you can lift your hand, look in the sky and sing and you still don't fall. So similarly, and then even short-term meditation was shown that it changed structurally some areas of the brain. So there's all these things. So those people who say altruism doesn't exist, and there's a number of those, the champions, I consider altruism as evil, our dear friend Ayn Rand. And Freud even said, he said many quotes, but he said, unfortunately, that a dream to have provoked by altruistic interest, you're only being deceived by appearances. And sorry, you quoted Jung this morning, but he was not too also optimistic. He said, evil is a gigantic proportion so that the church to talk of original sin is almost an euphemism. The case is far graver and is grossly underestimated. Evil is human nature itself. So fortunately, I think we have proven that it's just the opposite. And that's very good news. So now, altruism, one of the challenges of our times, and that's what I want to end up with, is that we have three big challenges. We have one challenge is to conciliate three things, 3 time scale. One is the short term of the economy, economic prosperity, and we say, well, if we don't have that, nothing will work. But there's also life satisfaction, the time of a career, of a family, of a generation, of a lifetime. If a country is the most powerful and the richest and everybody is unhappy, what's the point? It's a complete waste of the goals is lost in the means. So it's a waste of time. So we need to, of course, make everything necessary for people's flourishing. And then we have the next generation. We are never, of course, at the negotiation table. But, if now 1,000 people will decide the fate of 7 billion humans, everybody will shout like crazy. But that's exactly what we are doing for billions and billions of generations to come. So extend altruism to future generations is the ultimate test to altruistic being. Because economists, they just can't function like that. Think seriously of the interest of generations to come. Even they know from the Stern report that it's going to cost 20 times more to deal with the mess than to deal now with preventing climate change and so forth, but it's not in their account right now. So conceptually it's very hard, and we must acknowledge that. But the one concept that unites those 3 time scale is altruism. Because if you have more consideration for others, you will not play like at Las Vegas with the savings of the people who trusted you. If you have more consideration for others, you will make that the workplace is a place we are happy to be, and you are happy to be part of a common effort to achieve something, but in an environment that allows you to flourish. And if you have more consideration for others, you cannot neglect the shape of the fate of the future generation, because they don't exist. Some philosophers say they have no right because they don't exist. What a drag. So here what we are now in terms of the environment. And so that's why we need altruism is no more a luxury, it's a total necessity. We cannot dispense of a more caring, the solidarity in our times. We are at the edge. Why? There is a concept called planetary boundaries, which has 9 factors of loss of biodiversity. By 2050, we will have lost at this rate 30% of all species on Earth. It's not a joke. Agricultural land use, so you can read. So in 1900, none of those was even threatening in any way. Then in 1950 came what we call the Anthropocene, the time where the human activities start to have a major impact on the planet. So it's almost a new geological area. So now you can see some of them are coming up, like climate change and ozone depletion and agricultural land. So there's something happening, but it's still manageable. Now just guess what you're going to see next, 2010. Ready. Here we are. So we have vastly overgone. The safety zone is the zone in which humanity can prosper safely, like in the Holocene with a very stable climate that we had for 12,000 years, where civilization could flourish, agriculture and all that. Now, after that, we don't know. So That's what we need to tackle. There's many ways, there are solutions, but just going on the same way, in a sort of self-centered, selfish way, is not going to work. We would need, by 2050, 3 planets. Just now, if the Chinese population had as many cars as in the US per habitant, we need the whole oil reserve for 1 year just for China. So it's simply not possible, so we have to find another way. So sustainable harmony means to take out of poverty 1.5 billion people and to stop the crisis is the crisis of the superfluous. We don't need all this extraordinary amount of waste of resources just for unnecessary things. So we need to have a happy simplicity and sobriety, so to moderate our consumption sort of instinct, at the same time bring people out of poverty, and then humanity could go on. So that's the ultimate challenge to altruism. And one of the way is, for instance, 18% of the greenhouse gas emissions, it comes from industrial farming. This is just a parenthesis, but that's the easiest way to diminish, because it comes from methane, it comes from the livestock. Methane has only a lifetime of 10 years in the atmosphere. So, and also it is the question of ethics, because to make 1 kilo of meat, you need 10 kilos of vegetable proteins from population who don't have enough to eat. And of course, it's the richest country that eat more meat. So you could feed 1.4 billion people with all the millions of tons that are used just to raise livestock. And you see the USA consumption of meat is 120 kilos per year per person. In India, it's 2.5. So those things makes us think, and we should. This is why we need to, grow our compassion, and that's my favorite quote about this. And so now, within the 2 minutes I have, 2:20. I just want to share with you what also we are doing, since Bill spoke about that in the beginning. So we have now 120 projects. We went from 30 to 100. So very briefly, it's compassion in action, because you might think, no, it's very nice. You have this wonderful hermitage in front of the Himalayas. Good for you. But we try to do something. So we have now a number of clinics. We treat 100,000 patients a year. In Nepal, we have a palliative care unit, and we take care of handicapped people. In India, we have a mobile clinic that goes to 19 villages, very, very remote villages that don't see any doctor at any time. So we help the women. We have a women education class with solar panels made by illiterate grandmothers, thanks to our friend Bunker Roy from the Barefoot College. In Nepal, we build school with bamboos. This is a school built for 100,000 euros. That's $130,000 in 2 months for 2,000 kids. And 60% girls, and so all bamboo. So we did a few of those. Here in Tibet, we did 19 clinics in nomad area. This is our car, so the driver is reciting his mantras. But we built 18 bridges now, including one on the Yangtze River. We take care of the elderly. This is the happiest man in the world. Tibetan doctor who is neither an ophthalmologist nor a dentist. And then this is the happiest woman in the world, and this is our Karuna girl. Karuna means compassion, as the name of our foundation, and we build 20 schools in Tibet. So this is a great joy. I can tell you the warm glow is great, even it's cold up there. And this is a monastic college, the day of exams, so the one of them is trying to look on the other copy. And we try to revive traditional crafts, and also we intervene in earthquake area. That's in 2010, the Yushu earthquake. So we brought 6 trucks of goods, and we took out this girl out of the rubbles after 3 days. She with her uncle. And we are building this year an earthquake-resistant school at 12,000 feet. So this is some of the things that we do. And then just to finish with a few images, just to calm down. So this is a glacial lake in Tibet. I try to swim every year. It's pretty cold. And this is, anyone wants to look, this is our projects. So that's it. Thank you.
So, thank you. I'm wondering if anyone's looked at, in terms of altruism, I'm wondering if anybody's looked at the variability of sort of engaging in altruism with then any kind of perception of likelihood of future reward. It yes. seems like most of your examples that, it would be so sudden, so quick to make that decision that it's unlikely that it's a calculation of some future benefit.
No, of course. Of course, it has been done. First of all, there is something that is not full altruism, which is reciprocity. And reciprocity can be selfish. I mean, you just really do that to get something immediately, but also could be a very important factor for the fabric of social harmony. People, that if you go, and in Nepal they still do it, at the time of the crops, everybody comes. They don't sign an agreement, but they know that when their turn comes, everybody will go. So it's understood. And it's, people keep sort of, not precise account, but it would be shocking if someone doesn't do that, and it will not last. That person will lose his reputation as someone which is not a proper person, and it will be outside of the circle, therefore it will not prosper. So that's it. It's an equilibrium. Now, in terms of looking for reward, Daniel Batson did 25 different stratagems or, experimental settings to eliminate all those possibilities one by one, because his work was heavily criticized by people who said, no, because of this. And then he would devise another experimental setting to show that if it was the case, then people will behave in such way. And he actually found that still the same number. Of course, there's 30% of people who do behave extremely selfishly. Some are, but a good deal of people will do altruistically no matter what. They don't, they have a choice to know about they know that there's a little chance that it will work, but still there's some chance they will do it. They will want to hear about the person's fate after 1 month. There's all this kind of, I cannot go in details, but he tried one by one all the possibilities. And then, there's so many explanation. For instance, like blood giving. Some people said, well, in England at some point they didn't have enough blood. So they said, let's give a reward to people. It went down. Because people say, well, it's a job and now people are paid for it, so I'm not going anymore. But the majority were actually people who are doing it just because they want to help. But the moment it became with a reward, they say, well, now they will get plenty of people who get the money, but actually fewer. And then the rate of volunteers fell down. There's many similar experiments that the moment you give a monetary incentive, people stop doing. So there's plenty of those, and there's a huge number of studies and from different perspectives, and so that shows that, of course, it is a possibility, but there are plenty of people who actually will do it with no intention of reward at all.
Okay. Yeah. Throughout this workshop, I've been thinking a lot about how creativity is used differently by what we might call the mage or magician, whether that's a scientist or a shaman, and a wise man. And I think that's very important because creativity can be used very negatively in terms of a search for power or control, and how differently it would be used for a wise man. So I wanted to say thank you for being a representative of an extraordinarily wise tradition in a beautiful way. I appreciate that. However, I would like to make the case for the woman with the glass. I listened carefully to your description of the sticker experiments, but I have read a number of texts in which people like Sogyal Rinpoche in the New Tibetan Book of Living and Dying talks about being with his master as a young child, 7 and then 14 and then 21, and receiving from that master what he called an intimation of the view, which I think is basically what the woman experienced in the glass of water. Now, the difference is that Sogyal Rinpoche and others who have described this have a system through which they can begin to develop that themselves. That's this whole process of all of these different kinds of meditation. But if you're a Westerner, and given the kind of time situation we're dealing with now in terms of the planet's lifespan, it seems to me that a whole lot of people need to have an experience of the view, which then can be facilitated through meditation and various other things in order to arrive at that capacity for compassion, not just simply giving the stickers away, but, you know, the transformation of the self that allows you to experience the other as yourself and the planet as yourself. So I don't know how you come down on that, but certainly the way that I do.
Well, I think that since the Dalai Lama has been very clear that it has to be through education. It's the only way that we can reach everyone in a secular way. And the secular is not diminishing those aspects. It's just because, again, he said this is more fundamental than the particular religious movements, philosophy, path, that we may choose religion or not, but we need compassion. It's not a matter of choice. So we have the potential for it. All the study with young children show that they're actually extremely undiscriminately cooperative till the age 5, and then they start discriminating if people treat them well or not. But in the beginning, they make very little discrimination. So the potential is there, and I think the only way it can be done as a global scale is through this kind of education. And then, the idea that before it was the religion that were teaching ethics and morals and how to be a good human being. Now it cannot be the case worldwide. You cannot have a religion that satisfies everyone, and there's at least a good proportion of human beings now. I think 1 billion that declared officially they are. It's what the Dalai Lama said the other day. Declared atheist. So that you cannot go through the religions for that. But nevertheless, the potential is there. So the idea that, therefore, since religion are not there to teach values, that the school should be neutral. So that's a loser's perspective, because the kids will get values anyway, but what they will get is through violent video games, among other things. So they will get values, and who will be, we contest that it is not okay, because some people are against teaching values. They say, oh, no, you can't impose values. But tolerance, warm-heartedness, honesty, to be friendly to others. Who would say, oh no, you can't teach that? If parents should do that, parents will go, no, they have gone to all do the same thing. So neutrality is not. It doesn't work. It's not neutral. It's just absence of something. So you're actually killing the potential. So. And the schools would have been teaching value. There's a Kidlington school in England. They have been doing for 20 years in a very difficult environment where there's no suburbs and very hard environment. It's amazing how they got stellar result. The kids come out with real values. They have the value of the month, where they write everything on the wall, and everything is taught on the base of that value that they choose, whether it's honesty, kindness, whatever. And now a lot of people come to see how it works. And now cooperative learning, where you learn not to compete but to cooperate. Now it's in hundreds of schools throughout the world. So that in Finland also, they do that all the time. So this is the way to go, according to, I think, everyone. We should start with education. Otherwise, you will never get people go to someone like Kensei Moshe and get introduction to nature of mind. That's not going to be for 7 billion human beings. Unfortunately, it will be great, but we're not there yet.
Thank you very much. That was amazing, and also for the beautiful pictures. I was curious to know if you had any insight or comment on Tenzin Gyatso, the 14th Dalai Lama's endorsement of Dmitry Iskov, the Global Futures Project. It's something that came out of Russia for human immortality and an avatar project. It's something that was endorsed by the Dalai Lama, and I'm just curious if you knew about it.
Global Teacher Project, you said?
For the advancement of human immortality through an avatar.
Well, I cannot comment because I don't know the details, but knowing His Holiness hand to raise, how careful they are not to have His Holiness name used in different ways. I think this needs to be checked carefully, the less I can say.
Okay, it's on the internet on Global
Yeah,
Futures.
well, there's plenty of the internet. No, any tool has a good and difficult aspects. Yeah.
I think we'll wrap and give everyone a break.
Sure. Okay, wonderful.